As usual, I want to start today's episode with a simple question. Why do you actually believe in the value of paper money? Think about it. A dollar bill is just a piece of linen fiber, or in other places, a slip of polymer. It's just scrap material with some ink and symbols printed by an organization that, let's be honest, neither you nor the other 8 billion people on this planet have any control over. In and of itself, that paper is worthless. Yet this global game keeps spinning. Why? Collective delusion. You trade your limited time for these bills because you believe they'll buy you a steak. The grocery store accepts them because it believes they can pay their electricity bill with them. The Federal Reserve prints them because they believe everyone will keep believing, or because they'll force you to. The government guarantees its value, but remember, that guarantee is a promise, not a vault full of gold. That safety net vanished in 1971 when Richard Nixon severed the link between the dollar and gold. It was a masterstroke of financial deception. Today, the value of that green paper isn't in the ink. It's held together by political systems, social pressure, and a deep-seated fear of what happens if the illusion breaks. To put it bluntly, the value of money is a global magic trick maintained by laws, firepower, and herd mentality. It is a system of forced interests, layered one on top of the other. Welcome to the channel, where uncomfortable truths are quietly examined. The moment you draw your first breath, a contract is signed in your name. You didn't choose it. You didn't read the fine print, but the system has already accounted for you. Think about the life of an average American today. From the day you are assigned a social security number, you are no longer just a human being. You are a line item in a ledger. Every time you flip a light switch, turn on the faucet, or pick up a gallon of milk, you are interacting with a web of obligations. The utility bills, the property taxes, the income tax, these aren't just costs of living. They are the dues you pay to remain a member in good standing within their machine. Most people call this freedom. They believe that because they can choose between 50 types of cereal at the grocery store, they are free. But that is a hollow kind of liberty. Real freedom isn't the ability to choose your brand of consumption. It is the ability to walk away from the game entirely, but try it. Try living for just 1 week without their currency. The supermarket won't feed you. The hospital won't heal you. The very roof over your head will be pulled away if you stop paying the rent the government calls property tax. This is the invisible contract. It's an agreement enforced by the necessity of survival. We aren't just using money because it's convenient. We are using it because the system has made it impossible to exist without it. And if the money itself is the foundation of this contract, then we need to understand how that foundation is being used, not as a tool for your prosperity, but as a weapon for your control. Most people view money as a neutral tool, a convenient way to trade your labor for a car, or a sandwich, or a home. But that is a carefully maintained illusion. In reality, money is the most sophisticated weapon ever devised. It doesn't break bones, and it doesn't spill blood. Instead, it dictates behavior. Think about how the system keeps you in line. If you want to buy land in America, you must use the US dollar. If you want to pay the doctor who saved your life, you must use the US dollar. You cannot pay your property taxes in Bitcoin. You cannot pay them in gold bars. The law doesn't just suggest you use their currency. It demands it. This is the art of the fiat cage. If you decide tomorrow to stop using their money, you aren't just making a financial choice. You are effectively excommunicating yourself from society. Without that specific piece of paper, you become a ghost in the machine. No bank will hold your wealth. No grocery store will recognize your value. You are pushed to the fringes, labeled as a rebel, or simply left to starve. The weapon isn't the paper itself. The weapon is the dependency. By making the US dollar the only legal way to settle debts and taxes, the state ensures that every hour of your work, every drop of your sweat, belongs to their ecosystem. It's a silent threat. They don't need to put a soldier on every street corner to control you. They just need to control the medium you use to buy your bread, because once they control your ability to survive, they control your willingness to obey. And once you realize that you are trapped in a system of forced participation, you begin to wonder, who actually owns the keys to this cage? To understand the cage you live in, you have to look back to a single moment in time. August 1971, the day the world changed, though most people didn't notice until it was too late. Before that day, money had an anchor. If you held $1, you held a claim on a specific amount of gold. It was a tether to reality, a promise that the government couldn't just wish wealth into existence. But Richard Nixon decided that the anchor was too heavy for his ambitions. He temporarily suspended the gold standard. That temporary move has lasted over 50 years. And in that moment, money stopped being a store of value and started being an act of faith. When the link to gold was severed, money became air. Suddenly, the banking system could print as much as they needed to fund wars, debts, and bailouts. But here is the truth they don't tell you in school. When they print more money, they aren't creating wealth, they are diluting yours. Think of it as a giant, invisible theft of time. If you worked 10 hours to save $100 in 1970, that $100 represented 10 hours of your life. But when the government prints trillions more, your $100 buys less. Your 10 hours of life are now worth only 5, then 2, then 1. They didn't just steal your purchasing power. They stole your past, the energy you spent, the sacrifices you made. They were liquidated to pay for a system that doesn't care about you. The lesson is simple, yet brutal. If your money has no intrinsic value, then your savings are just a ticking clock. You are running a race where the finish line moves further away every single year. But if money is just air, how is it that the numbers in your bank account feel so heavy? To answer that, we have to look inside the engine itself. Most people believe that banks lend out the money that other people deposit. It's a comforting thought. It's also completely false in the modern world. Money is not found. It is not mined. It is conjured into existence the moment someone signs a loan document. This is the engine of debt. When you go to a bank to borrow $100,000 for a house or a business, the bank doesn't look into a vault to see if it has those physical bills. They simply type those numbers into a computer screen. Click. $100,000 just entered the money supply. Before you signed that paper, that money did not exist. After you signed it, it became a liability you must spend the next 30 years of your life paying back, plus interest. Think about the cold mathematics of this. The bank created the principal, the original loan, out of thin air. But they did not create the interest. Where does the money to pay the interest come from? It has to come from someone else's loan. This is why the system can never stop. If everyone in the world paid off their debts tomorrow, money would literally vanish. There would be nothing left but empty computer screens. The system is a mathematical trap. It requires a constant, endless cycle of new people taking on new debt just to keep the old debts from collapsing. It's a game of musical chairs where the music is played by the Federal Reserve. And you are the one frantically looking for a seat. You aren't working for money. You are working to service a debt that was created by a keystroke. But if the entire system is built on a mountain of IOUs, who gets to stand at the top of that mountain? And why do they always seem to get richer while you struggle to stay level? In a system built on debt, not all new money is created equal. There is a hierarchy to who gets it first. Economists call this the Cantillon effect. I call it the insider's buffet. When the central bank decides to inject trillions of dollars into the economy, that money doesn't just fall from the sky like rain onto everyone's lawn. It enters the system through a specific door. The big banks, the government contractors, the massive corporations, the people at the top of the mountain. These elites get the fresh money before it has a chance to circulate, because the prices of goods haven't gone up yet. They can buy assets at today's prices. They buy the real estate. They buy the stocks. They buy the gold. They use the money while its purchasing power is at its peak. By the time that money filters down to you, in the form of a small raise or a stimulus check, it's already too late. The very act of printing that money has already driven up the price of the house you wanted to buy, and the food you need to eat. By the time the money reaches your pocket, its value has been diluted. You are effectively receiving the leftovers of the system's purchasing power. The elite get the meat, you get the crumbs, and then you're handed the bill for the entire meal in the form of inflation. This is why, during every economic crisis, the billionaires get richer while the middle class disappears. It isn't because they worked harder than you. It's because they stood closer to the printer. The system isn't broken. It is working exactly as it was designed. It is a giant mechanism for transferring wealth from those who produce it to those who control the currency. But if this is the game being played at the top, what happens to those of us in the middle who are trying to play by the old rules? Then there is the great American dream. The suburban house with the manicured lawn, the 2 cars in the garage, the prestigious job title. To the world, you look successful, but if you look closer, you'll see the glint of the golden handcuffs. The middle class is the engine that keeps the system running. Not because they want to, but because they have no choice. Unlike the poor, who have nothing to lose, and the elite, who have already won, the middle class is trapped in a state of perpetual fear. You are encouraged to buy a lifestyle you can't quite afford, using money you haven't yet earned. That 30-year mortgage isn't just a loan for a home. It is a 30-year tether that ensures you will never say no to your boss. That shiny SUV in the driveway, that's a 5-year contract to keep you sitting in traffic every Monday morning. The credit cards in your wallet, they are the weights that keep you from swimming to shore. The system has designed a specific trap for you. Lifestyle creep. As soon as you earn more, you are conditioned to spend more. A bigger house, a better school for the kids, a more expensive vacation. You are running faster and faster on the treadmill, just to stay in the same place. You think you are building wealth, but you are actually just a temporary warehouse for the bank's assets. You own the house? No. The bank owns the house. You are just the caretaker who pays for the repairs and the taxes. This is the illusion of freedom. You have just enough to feel comfortable, but never enough to be truly free. You are too rich to quit, but too poor to stop working. You are the primary donor in this system of debt. But even as you run this race, there is a silent thief following you. A thief that doesn't need to break into your home to take what's yours. He just needs to wait for you to look the other way. Governments don't like to talk about taxes. It makes people angry. It starts revolutions. So they use a different method, a silent one. They call it inflation. I call it the stealth tax. Most people think of inflation as prices going up, But that's a lie of language. Prices aren't going up. The value of your money is going down. The water is rising because the ship is sinking. Think about this. A decade or two ago, you could walk into a diner and get a full breakfast for $5. Today, that same $5 might not even buy you the coffee. Did the eggs become harder to lay? Did the wheat become harder to grow? No. The resources are the same. It's the medium of exchange that has been corrupted. Here is the Stoic truth. Your money represents the hours of your life you traded to earn it. If you worked all day to save $50, that bill is a physical container of your life force. When the government prints trillions and your $50 now only buys half of what it did before, they haven't just lowered your bank balance. They have reached back into your past and stolen the hours you already worked. They are taxing your energy. They are taxing your youth. And the best part for them, most people will blame the grocer or the gas station owner or a distant war. They will never look at the printer. If you do not learn how to protect the fruit of your labor, you are essentially filling a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. You can work harder. You can work longer. But as long as you hold your wealth in their air, you are losing the race against time. And yet, as devastating as this theft is, it is only one part of a much larger harvest. Because every few years, the system needs more than just your spare change. It wants your entire farm. In the world of the elite, there is a season for everything, a season to plant and a season to harvest. In the financial world, they call these business cycles. But if you look closer, they look more like a sheep shearing. The process is always the same. First, they lower the interest rates. They make money cheaply. They encourage you to borrow, to expand, to buy that second property, or to pour your savings into a booming stock market. The music is playing, the party is loud, and everyone feels like a genius. This is the planting season, but then the wind changes. The central banks decide it's time to fight inflation. They raise interest rates. They tighten the supply. Suddenly, the cheap money disappears. The debt that felt so light a year ago now feels like a millstone around your neck. Businesses struggle. Property prices stumble. The stock market bleeds. And when the middle class can no longer keep up with their payments, the defaults begin. Foreclosures, bankruptcies, liquidations. This is the harvest. The elite, who moved their wealth into cash or hard assets at the top of the cycle. Now they return to the ruins. They buy your home for pennies on the dollar. They buy up the companies that failed. They consolidate more power, more land, and more control. Using the very wealth that was bled out of the working class during the crash, you are told that crises happen, that they are an act of God. But ask yourself, why is it that the same small group of people always ends up owning more of the world after every unforeseen disaster? The lesson is brutal. In this system, if you do not understand the seasons of debt, you are not a player. You are the crop. You are being grown just to be harvested. And as the world becomes more connected, their tools of harvest are becoming even more precise. They are moving beyond the shearing of your wallet and toward the total enclosure of your digital life. For decades, the physical nature of cash provided a final frontier of privacy. If you had a $20 bill in your pocket, the government didn't know where you spent it or what you bought with it. But that window of anonymity is closing. The next evolution of the invisible contract is here. Central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. Don't mistake this for Bitcoin or the freedom of decentralization. This is the opposite. This is the digital cage. In a world of CBDCs, every single cent you own is a line of code controlled by the central bank. They won't just see your transactions. They will possess the power to permit or deny them. Imagine a world where your money has an expiration date, to force you to spend and stimulate the economy. Imagine a world where you cannot buy meat or fuel because you've already hit a carbon limit dictated by an algorithm. Imagine your bank account being frozen instantly, not because you committed a crime, but because your social credit dropped, or because you supported the wrong political cause. This is the ultimate harvest, the total enclosure of human behavior. When money becomes fully programmable, your autonomy vanishes. You are no longer a citizen with rights. You are a user with a limited license to exist, subject to the terms and conditions of the state. The transition will be sold to you as convenience. It will be sold as security and efficiency. But remember the Stoic truth. Any system that can give you everything with a click, it can take everything away with a keystroke. The walls of the cage are being built as we speak, and once the door is locked, there is no walking away. But even in the shadow of this coming machine, there is a way to stay human. There is a way to preserve your time and your soul. But it requires you to stop playing their game by their rules. So, we face a system that prints air, harvests debt, and builds digital cages. The question isn't how to break the system. The question is, how do you stop being its fuel? The exit strategy is not a sprint. It is a long, cold walk towards sovereignty. It begins by changing what you value. If money is air, you must seek what earth is. Hard assets, things that exist whether the power grid is on or off. Real estate that produces food or shelter. Gold that has survived every empire for 5,000 years. And most importantly, the asset between your ears, your skills, your knowledge, and your ability to solve problems are the only things the government cannot tax into oblivion or freeze with a keystroke. Think of the giants. Men like Warren Buffett didn't get rich by chasing the green candles of a hyped-up market. They succeeded because they understood one Stoic truth. Time is the friend of the real asset and the enemy of the paper one. They bought when the world was terrified. They held when the world was greedy. They played the game of decades while everyone else was playing the game of minutes. To exit the matrix, you must kill your own greed. Stop looking for the one-night win. The system feeds on your desire for fast money, because fast money is always their money. Slow wealth, built on tangible value and patient accumulation, is yours. Lower your dependencies. Eliminate the debts that bind you to a desk you hate. Invest in community, in land, and in tools. Become a person who is difficult to track, difficult to control, and impossible to replace. The truth is uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. Once you stop believing in their magic trick, the magician loses his power over you. You are no longer a cog in their machine. You are the architect of your own sanctuary. The system will keep spinning. The printer will keep humming. But you will be standing on solid ground. Choose reality over the illusion every single day.